Welcome to Harry Cole Saves the West, the show where American grit meets British backbone. Well, Donald Trump's done it again. The president has Washington spinning after dropping fresh hints that maybe he's not done yet, and we'll be seeing more of these hats. Is he joking, or is he actually running again in 2028? Let's see how senators are reacting to the news. Here's Tommy Tuberville from Alabama.
Senator, is it constitutional for President Trump to run for a third term? He's teasing that.
If you read the Constitution, it says it's not. But if he says he has some different circumstances that might be able to go around the Constitution, but that's up to him. We got a long way to go.
But you're open to it.
Well, I think that there's going to have to be an evaluation from President Trump's viewpoint to the Constitution. There'll be a lot of legal aspects to it. Will it happen? It's very unlikely, but don't ever close the book on President Trump.
Don't ever close the book on Donald Trump. How would it work? It would mean scrapping the 22nd Amendment, which bars third terms. Almost impossible legally. But since when did Donald Trump care about precedent? America's toxic boyfriend Gavin Newsom says he's deeply concerned about even talk of a third term. But is Trump teasing? Is he testing? Is he trolling? Or is he actually planning the biggest political comeback since, well, his last one? Joining me live from Washington, D.C. tonight is Brick Suit Guy, #1 Donald Trump fan Blake Marnell. Welcome back to the show. And pollster to the stars, James Johnson from JL Partners, one of the very few firms in America, in the world, to predict that Donald Trump would not only win, but he'd win the popular vote. Again, another fan of the show, friend of the show. Welcome back, Blake. Can I call you Blake or Brick?
Brick.
In fact, I'm gonna take my hat off because I don't want to upstage your talk. First of all, just
thank you.
Talk us through your wonderful outfit here. You have attended dozens and dozens and dozens of Donald Trump rallies. So many so that you actually got to on stage with the president dressed as
a brick suit, as a brick wall. It's a metaphor for border controls. You know, I definitely support President Trump's stance on strong border barriers.
Well, I think we can all get behind that.
Yes, and this is something I actually bought because I had a trip planned where I was going to have some free days in D.C.
Yeah.
And I wanted something to trigger the leftists. I said something beyond just the
Did it
normal
work?
something beyond the normal MAGA hat. So I had that vacation planned, and the day before I left San Diego, President Trump announced a rally in Pennsylvania, and I was able to go to that. It was the first time I ever wore this, and he called me up on stage. And when the president calls you up on stage and you're wearing a brick suit, you become brick suit.
And you've definitely gone national. You've definitely almost gone global. I suspect as one of the most recognisable MAGA movement characters. In that capacity, would you like to see Donald Trump stay in the White House past 2028?
You know, I would like to see Trump forever.
Trump forever.
Okay, I would. You know, if I could sign up for that, I would. But realistically, I'd like to see him do whatever he would like.
Right.
If he wants to remain active at the apex of American politics, and he can find a way to do it, you know, I would support that. I think, and then what the senator talked about it being constitutional. Well, there's another way around it. I mean, he could technically run as the vice president, and whoever wins immediately resigns, and he becomes the president. Because the stipulation is you can't be elected for a third term.
But, I mean, you'd have to convince one J.D. Vance. I think that was a good idea. You'd have to convince Marco Rubio it's a good idea. Trump, is he teasing? Is he trolling?
Hard to tell, isn't it? I don't want to put words in his mouth. And there are people who are looking at it legitimately because they think that would be the best course. But I think that President Trump will, he'll make his decision when an appropriate time comes.
In order to do it, the other way to do it is you'd have to amend the Constitution, which requires a two-thirds, correct me if I'm wrong, a two-thirds majority in the Senate, two-thirds majority in the House, and the ratification of two-thirds of the states.
Correct.
Hell no is he getting that.
I don't see, even the rosiest of pictures, I don't see that as happening. It's technically not impossible, but highly, highly improbable.
James Johnson, hello. What is the public sentiment around this? Because we saw allegedly 7 million protesters on the streets of America a couple of weeks ago, last weekend for the No Kings protests. You know, we're seeing the hysterical backlash at the demolition of the East Wing to make way for the ballroom. Everyone's getting upset about the Rose Garden and the big flag. This would be the ultimate King move. It would Don, wouldn't
It would be the ultimate king move. Look, I think it's probably trolling. I don't think that this is on the cards. I don't think the constitutional route is there. He could do that vice president route. You're quite right, Blake. But actually, he said last night it's a bit too cute.
Yes.
Which is American for it's going a bit too far.
Yes. And when even Donald Trump says it's too far.
Indeed. So look, I mean, Republicans are relatively supportive of the idea. Half of Republicans, of Trump voters, say that they'd support it. But remember, that's another half who are actually saying they're not supportive.
Yeah.
So, and by Trump voters' terms, that is not the most enthusiastic. We asked voters how they would vote in the Republican primary if Trump ran. And interestingly, it's actually him in a dead heat with J.D. Vance.
Wow.
He doesn't necessarily top that poll. Now, that is not to say that Trump voters are not still in love with Trump. They absolutely are. Huge, huge approval ratings of Trump by Republicans. But I do think that unlike Trump's first term, there are now other figures that people see as the succession figures. They like Rubio, they like J.D. Vance. There wasn't really a figure like that in term one.
That's true, and also he is promoting. Donald Trump is promoting them. He said, said in his Asia visit overnight, exactly that. We've got great Secretary of State. He picked Vance, a younger man, almost as a sort of an anointment of his successor in appointing him as vice president. We had Tucker Carlson on the show last night, and he is obviously a massive figure within Trump movement. And let's see what he had to say. Would you like to see a third Trump term, if it was possible?
Well, I don't think it would be possible, and I also think at a certain point, I think younger people should serve. That's what I think. And not just in the United States, but all these guys. Look at these people, and it's like, come on.
Like, younger people should serve. That's, if you can't even get Tucker Carlson to endorse this theory, it's got some way to go. Is there anyone else that you can see in that Republican field that could beat J.D. Vance or Rubio?
Right now we have a really deep bench, and I think that's great. And I think that obviously, if everything goes well over the next 3 years, that J.D. Vance has the inside track. Rubio is doing fantastic, but there are other people who are doing fantastic as well. And I think that as I said, we have a deep bench. It's going to be very interesting to see how this shapes up, because it will be the first primary where you have an incumbent vice president potentially being the front runner. That hasn't happened in a while. And it'd be interesting to see how that plays out.
Who does your gut say would take it, Vance or Rubio? I mean, the way it looks to me is it's shaping up that it's going to be one of them at the top of the ticket. But that's the ticket, right?
I think it's going to be J.D. Vance. If I had to make a wager right now, which I'm not going to do, I think that part of him taking the mantle of vice president was knowing that in 4 years' time he would have the opportunity to run. So I'm thinking that I think that makes sense, and I don't know. Rubio has run before. I don't know if he's going to be up for it again.
Against Donald Trump. Little Marco, he called him.
And he has become great Marco. In my estimation, the little that's just gone. It's a misnomer now. He looks fantastic.
He looks slightly pained at times, though, doesn't he? He's a bit like you see him sitting there in the Oval Office on the sofa, and he's like, Trump's coming out with whatever.
He's afraid he's going to get another job. I mean, he's already got 4, right? He's just afraid, what am I going to have to do now? I mean, so he is, but I think that he's doing fantastic. Absolutely.
James Johnson, how is that race shaping up? Who is, you said that J.D. Vance is tied out there with Trump. But how is little Marco's little polling figures?
Got some numbers for you.
Got some numbers.
Fresh off the press.
This is why you bought your laptop.
This is why the laptop's here.
Fantastic.
JL Partners, we polled Republican primary voters earlier this week with the race as it looks to be shaping up. 40% say J.D. Vance.
Okay, so that's a pretty insurmountable mountain for other candidates.
Point, he is 32 points ahead of Rubio on 8%. Then Ron DeSantis, the Florida governor, on 7%.
Ran before disaster.
Accordingly, Nikki Haley, 5%.
The last never Trumper.
Indeed. Ted Cruz, 4%. And then really everyone there is on 3% or less. So it is J.D. Vance's race at the moment, absolutely. If you throw Trump Jr. into the mix, Trump's son, he actually comes second place.
Interesting.
On 20%. So, the Trump name is still very powerful. Some people are talking about, could there be a J.D. Vance Trump Jr. ticket that might lance that boil, so to speak. But at the moment, it's absolutely JD's to lose.
And on that, going back to the theme of kings, what is the public sentiment around, a Trump legacy? Obviously, we've seen the Bushes do it. The Clintons have made a family business of this game. What is the public perception of the Trump Jr. particularly, and is there a sort of backlash to this idea of America isn't, you're not really meant to inherit these things here?
Republican voters really like the idea, and actually don't just think of just Trump Jr. It's also Eric Trump. He also polls
who's
well.
been he's been running the family businesses. He's been running the golf courses. He's written a book, #1 bestseller in the New York Times bestseller list. So he's getting his name out there, writing a book.
Absolutely, and he's even said he might consider politics. So he's popular. Trump Jr. is popular. That's with Republican voters. Voters as a whole are a little bit less convinced.
Right.
And I think it is important to remember that Donald Trump, the senior, had that sort of appeal and that sort of sense of authenticity, sense of strength. I don't think the voters are quite seeing that in the children overall, and I think that explains that's one of the reasons that the J.D. Vances, the Rubios are doing a bit better. They're seen as a bit more suitable.
And you would
for the job.
expect also the scrutiny of a presidential run to start looking at some of those business dealings under a slightly finer microscope could be.
Yeah, and this is why I don't think J.D. Vance Trump Jr. ticket works. It's too much of a bro ticket, right?
Yeah.
Like, where's the reach across? That doesn't mean it needs to be, it doesn't mean that it needs to be identity politics based, but you do need a broad ticket, and that is two very similar people.
Rick, would you like to see another Trump legacy?
I would, but I may not see it for a few decades.
It's going to be barren.
It is, yes, exactly. Exactly. It could skip, and if he wants to do that. Now, Eric, he didn't even mention his wife, Lara Trump,
indeed, Lara Trump,
former, co-chair of the RNC, so definitely politically inclined of her own right, and that would be, a powerhouse couple to have in the White House. Yeah. I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at what we're doing for the midterms. I'm looking at what we're doing for 26. Looking ahead to 28, still a long ways away from me, but I'm not opposed to another Trump in the White House by any means.
Which leads me very nicely, thank you, to my next question of are you confident this, the Trump administration 2.0, 47, whatever you want to call it, has had it's had a new layer of professionalism to it. They're moving fast, they're getting stuff done, they control the House, they control the Senate. If they lose the House in 26 next year, we're going to be seeing Dems trying to impeach him again, losing control of the Republicans losing control of the committees, inquiry after inquiry after inquiry after inquiry, completely bogging the president down. How is it looking from where you are down in San Diego? How is it looking across the country? And what's the mood amongst your MAGA superfans like? And will he hold the House?
Well, in California right now, Gavin Newsom is trying to upend the state constitution.
Yeah.
And basically we have an independent commission that sets the House of Representative districts in California. And he's trying to get that tossed, and so that they can basically rewrite and gerrymander the congressional districts in California
Republicans have had a little
all
go
the way through 2030.
Republicans have had a little crack at that in Texas. And
well, but if you've seen the districts in Texas, Texas they were really doing it in response to already gerrymandered districts. They were really correcting that. And now what's happening in California is instead of a commission picking the districts, you have politicians picking their electorate, and that's not the way it should be. So California, Gavin Newsom, I like that.
America's
nickname, the
toxic boyfriend. There's
that
something
is fantastic.
Something just a bit creepy
and then,
about it.
Like so many of his little high school photos are coming out recently, and I just think there are skeletons to be dug up there. I think he gives people the willies. But I think that we're looking good because as California is trying its best to upend the apple cart, now we're seeing other Republican states come on board with potential redistricting of their own. And there's even the backdrop of the interpretation of the Voter Rights Act, which could add even more seats. And I think that if we are able to keep control of the House in the next midterm, that sets us up well for getting a proper census in 2030 so that we can actually have correct representation of American citizens from that point going on.
James Johnson, how is the polling looking? Traditionally, incumbent parties take a bit of a kicking in the midterms, but the Dems don't seem to be, barely on the pitch. They haven't even got their boots on.
No, and they don't have a sort of formal leader. It's not really clear. And indeed, perhaps
at least 90
well, this is the thing. In a week's time, that leader may become Zoran Mamdani, who is on track to be the Democratic mayor of New York, potentially on less than half of the vote. So he may well become that leader, much more left wing in terms of his views. Look, I think so. Our polling has pretty punchy approval ratings for Trump. We think he's on around 50% approval. That's very good for Trump. But in those same polls, we have the Democrats leading in the midterms.
Wow.
And the reason is that the electorates are so different. The people who vote in midterms are very different from the kind of voters who vote in presidential elections. And a lot of Trump's reason for winning last year was voters who don't usually vote in presidential elections, let alone midterm elections. So that is going to be difficult to mobilise those people, and that's why I think Democrats are the favourites for the House, despite being quite rudderless in terms of leadership and policy.
Which would be a kind of nightmare scenario for any second-term president to have basically the last 2 years in office as a completely lame duck, fighting off impeachment charges. And
it would, and it's going to drive Trump and his administration mad because you know it's going to be impeachments, it's going to be reporting. There is one blessing in disguise, though, for whoever that next Republican nominee is. It's a lot easier if you've got a split Congress because you can blame the Democrats for things that have gone wrong. At the moment, Trump and Republicans control everything, and they can't really deflect the blame for things going wrong. Democratic House gives that person someone to campaign
on that
against.
very point, you know, we're still in the government. The government is still shut down. They're scrambling around to pay the military. Lots of public services are shut down. Who is getting the blame for the shutdown? Obviously, as you say, the Republicans control Congress, but there is they need 60 votes to do it, to overturn it in the Senate. They're 5 short of that. Democrats are not voting to reopen the government. Who's getting the blame?
It's pretty diffuse. We asked the public this question last week, and it's basically split in 3. 1/3 say Trump.
See it there on
there
the
it
screen.
is. There it is. You can see around 1/3 say the Republicans, about 3 in 10 say the Democrats, and then another 3 in 10 are basically saying both equally or they're unsure. And what that's saying to me is that actually no one in particular is getting the blame for this. Now, we've done some other polling and looked at why people think a shutdown is on. Now, the nominal reason that Democrats are giving is because of disagreements over healthcare and Medicare handouts. We asked them, only 19%, of registered voters were able to say that it was because of healthcare. So that message is not there, and Democrats have failed to land that attack. So there's basically, at the moment, no political pressure for either side to try and concede.
Is that why do you think that both sides seem seemingly willing to let this kind of claim? Well, because if they're not getting it, not getting the blame, then crack on.
I think in many ways this is the shutdown that isn't. It's not affecting ordinary people that much. People are not blaming any one given party, and people can't really identify why it's happening. So yes, I think that is why. However, that could change very fast because now we're getting into the crunch time. We're on day 28 of this shutdown. We're now getting to a point where start of November, we're going to look at tax credits expiring. We're looking at SNAP benefits potentially expiring. Now, it's possible that they can get together and just fund those specific bits, but this is not something where that pain is just going to never be felt. It hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
Crunch time may well be coming.
Blake, we're looking ahead. We talked about the midterms, but looking ahead to 2028, not on the Republican side. I think we've covered that in some depth. Is there anyone on the left that you would look at and think, wow, they could do it? Obviously, Gavin Newsom's being very coy. He's trying to sort of out-Trump Trump with his tweets and his attacks.
I think Gavin Newsom will be our nominee.
He will be the nominee.
I think he'll be the nominee, but I believe that his political his experience from California is going to follow him, and I don't think that the American electorate will approve of it.
Do you think he could? So you don't think he'd win? Be a hell of a race, though. J.D. Vance versus Gavin.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a generational change. We'd be going away from our elder statesmen to a new generation. J.D. Vance is more than capable of taking on any opponent the Democrats can throw at him. So I have no problems thinking that J.D. is not going to be disadvantaged by running against Newsom. I just think when people in the rest of America find out about the things that Gavin Newsom did as the governor in California, it's not going to play well. And even, in California, it's basically a mono-party state. I mean, the Republicans do a good job of mounting opposition where they can, but there are so many Democratic voters in California that you want to talk about no kings. Newsom is essentially a king in California. He can almost get anything he wants through. Now, I hope he doesn't get through this Prop 50. I hope that gets defeated. But I don't think his experience is going to translate to the rest of America.
James Johnson, just very briefly on Newsom, is he far out ahead on the left? Is there anyone that's going to challenge him?
Voters are looking for someone who is strong and authentic. That's how Trump won. I can't see those attributes in Newsom. I think he's too slippery. I think he's too much of a classic politician.
Well, that's why the America's toxic boyfriend thing sticks, right? There's something kind of creepy about him.
I can't see it. Also,
central casting, isn't it?
Get prepared for the Democratic Party to lurch to the left, because as I say, next week they are going to elect in New York an extremely left-wing person. They've got AOC doing rallies. They've got other.
Bernie Sanders saying AOC should run. Run for president.
And there was a poll yesterday showing that she is leading in some of these early primary states.
Wow.
So, be ready for a real contender of the left. If the Democratic left can rally around one candidate on the left, then I think so-called centrists like Gavin Newsom, Josh Shapiro, I don't think they've got a chance.
James Johnson, we lived through what happens when a left of centre party caves in to the left in the Corbyn years of Labour in Britain. While you're here, amazing stat that's popped up about Keir Starmer, which is he is historically the most unpopular Prime Minister since polling was invented. There's no coming back from that, is there?
It's worse than Liz Truss, is it?
Worse than, well, if she had survived more than 44 days.
I see. I should
if
know
she made
that
it to
as
6
the
months,
polls.
jury
I was going to say there is one polling exception there. Look, I mean, Labour are in the doldrums. There's absolutely no doubt about that. There was a poll released today by YouGov that showed them on their lowest ever polling, 17% tied. With effectively tied statistically with the Greens, with the Lib Dems, and with
so within the margin of error, you could argue that the Labour are fifth.
Yeah, you could also argue that the Conservatives, by the way.
Yes.
So personally, if I'm in British politics, yes, things are terrible for Labour. There is no doubt about that. If I'm looking at British politics, though, I would still rather be the Labour Party than the Conservative Party, because Labour has got votes on the left to squeeze. They can say, come the election, Greens, Lib Dems, get on board, Corbynistas, get on board, because we've got to keep Nigel Farage out of Downing Street. That is a powerful message. The Conservatives have lost all credibility with those Reform voters, and I can't see them winning them back so easily.
There seems to me that there was a brief moment that Nigel Farage was hitting the 30s in the polls. He seems to be kind of stuck on 27, 28, 29 at the moment. Has he hit a natural ceiling? And as we saw in the recent by-election in Wales, is he actually going to be incredibly prone to, as you say, a rainbow alliance of Labour, Liberals, Greens, Islamists, and everyone all in together on the crazy bus to stop Trump?
Yeah,
stop Trump. To stop Farage. I've been here too long.
No, indeed, but that is what they will be saying. They will be saying Farage is Trump. And you need to get to stop him. Look, it is completely possible. I think that is a very plausible option. Don't forget, though, that all that matters in British politics is having a lead. And at the moment, Reform has that lead. It's tough to be a front runner, but if they can hold that over the coming years over Labour, then they could well still win, regardless of that tactical voting push. Also, remember, tactical voting has a ceiling when it comes to a general election. It's really easy for everyone to vote tactically in a by-election because not that many people vote and they're very engaged, people that do.
Yeah.
But in a general election, I mean, I'm always struck by doing focus groups in the UK, how many people don't realise that actually you're voting for an MP in a seat. A lot of people just assume it is a nationwide popular vote and the most popular party becomes Prime Minister.
Astonishing, yeah.
So, there is a limit to how much you can tactically vote. Look, I think Welsh by-elections, all very interesting, but the key proof point this year when millions of people voted were those local elections, and that is the first time that any party apart from Conservatives and Labour for the last 100 years has won a local election, and that party was Nigel Farage's Reform.
Blake, Nigel Farage and Donald Trump have a good friendship. Very briefly, before we go to a break, Donald Trump, and Keir Starmer struck up this unlikely alliance of a left-wing guy, a liberal guy, and Donald Trump. It's bad news for him if he thinks that, it's bad for a guy who looks at TV ratings and polls. If Donald Trump thinks that Keir Starmer's a stone-cold loser, it's going to not great look, is it?
No, it's not. And I think that Mr. Starmer was correct in identifying that we had the economic issues, and I think that's why they got together. But it's not a good look for him, no.
Blake, stay there. You're joining us. James Johnson, nice to see you. After the break, is the pen mighty the sword? But what if it's a robot? Welcome back to Harry Cole Saves the West. Don't forget to subscribe on my YouTube channel. Search Harry Cole Saves the West. You can watch the entire interview with Tucker Carlson last night, which was pretty lively at points, I must say so myself. But tonight, Washington's worst-kept secret is out. Former President Joe Biden's orders and pardons may be legally worthless because they weren't signed by the man himself. Yes, the House Oversight Committee says staff used the Autopen while Biden was incapacitated or unavailable. They're calling it corruption by automation, which is not very catchy, but I see their point. A constitutional nightmare from inside America's zombie White House. But I think the story goes far beyond the pen. For years, Biden's presidency lurched from one crisis to the next. His son's crack addiction, his wife's influence, and his declining mental capacity played out in front of the nation. So the question is, who was really running the White House? In the studio with me tonight is Rosemary Becchi, former candidate for Congress and still here, Brit Suit Man, Blake Marnell. Rosemary, this kind of strikes me, we kind of knew a lot of this already, but to see it there in a big thumping report, yes, from a Republican committee, but fairly devastating findings, right?
It is, and we expected it, right? This is exactly the findings that we expected to see. We knew all along that the staff and others were making decisions for President Biden.
Is there, I mean, I can't think of any modern precedent for the fact is that essentially we don't really know who was running the show. Was it his wife? Was it his national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, a big character? Who was making the decisions? Who, and you know, constitutionally, where does this leave the Dems?
It's definitely a question as in terms of who was running the country. And as you pointed out, it calls into question a lot of his executive actions and how legitimate they are. And so this report actually asks the Department of Justice to take a closer look at it and void those that actually he didn't make or that they can't be justified.
And do you expect that to happen? Pam Bondi's night saying all very helpful, but where does this go? Do you feel? We can read the report, we can get very angry, but realistically, is anyone going to get their collar felt for this?
It's hard to say at this point, and if the Justice Department pursues it, we may see a lot of litigation and things like that, and so ultimately we don't know where it's going to end up. But again, it kind of points out that maybe we need some reform here. Maybe there needs to be new legislation. Congress needs to take a look at it and really provide some guidance in terms of who should be using the Autopen and who has the responsibility for it.
Guys, stay there. We're going to bring in from New York, I believe, David Carlucci, former New York Democratic Senator. Welcome back, Mr. Carlucci. Nice to see you again. What the hell is going on? And who was running the country for 4 years? This report says that, you know, not all of Joe Biden's actions were his own. Well, whose were they?
Well, good question on what the heck is going on, because this is obviously a farce. Everyone that they had testify gave the evidence that Joe Biden gave the direction that the use of the Autopen was perfectly fine. So this is a fishing expedition done by a partisan committee with absolutely no proof. If anything, what we should be doing is investigating what's going on with the current administration in terms of the cryptocurrency, the $400 million plane from Qatar. The list goes on and on. They're doing everything but do the things that people want, like what is happening with the Jeffrey Epstein files. Instead, they're going after something that is just totally unsubstantiated, and there's no one that has actually held up to their argument. So it's just a fishing expedition, nothing more. That's what I see in this report.
Is it really totally unsubstantiated, though? We
Yes,
saw what happened play out over a painful couple of years in terms of Joe Biden's decline. You know, people around him now
opinion, but
well,
anybody
people
around him that was interviewed by this committee gave contrary evidence.
Well,
you can't point to one fact in this entire 100-page report that actually substantiates any wrongdoing whatsoever.
Except
now, you could have your opinion, but that's different.
It's not just my opinion, though, is it? it's dozens of your party
It's a
colleagues.
partisan opinion.
Well, no, because dozens of your party colleagues are
partisan opinion.
Dozens of your colleagues are queuing up, rushing to get books out, rushing to interviews. There's a big old row about how it was allowed to get to this position. Former White House staffers now admitting to people like Jake Tapper in his book, and and parts of the media now admitting that they had concerns all along that weren't covered at the time. You can't really just wash your hands of this and say everything was tickety-boo, everything was fine. There was clearly something going on here.
Well, wrong. Again, is that what our investigations committee in Congress is supposed to do? Just go after rumors and substantiate rumors? No, they're supposed to go and find evidence. And this committee didn't do any of that. And instead, you're just asking me opinion. Was everything hunky-dory? Someone's trying to sell a book? Okay. But when they're under oath, when they're actually giving testimony, no one has given anything contrary to what I've said. And so, yeah, we can have our opinions. We could say that maybe Biden wasn't as sharp as he used to be. But to claim that he was somehow that these Autopen signatures are invalid is just wrong. And any constitutional lawyer worth their salt will tell you the same. So this is a fishing expedition to divert attention from more important things like what's going on with the Jeffrey Epstein files and what's going on with the fact that our government is shut. And there's countless things that we could talk about and Congress should focus their attention on, but instead they're going on fishing expeditions like this.
So you're entirely confident that, no charges, no criminal actions and behaviour will be found. You're more than happy then to have Pam Bondi and the Department. Hang on, let me finish. Let Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice come in and have a proper look at this.
Well, again, from looking at that report, there's nothing there. I would rather our Attorney General do more concrete things like protecting our country, going after real crime, going after terrorism. That's what our committees should be doing instead of this nonsense. What are they going to do? They're going to find what's the end game here? It's like the dog that caught the car. They're not going to prove anything. And what are they going to do? Undo these signatures? I mean, if they want to do something, maybe they could put forth policies in place that could protect from this type of subjective observations that we see. Put forth some concrete measures, put some rules in place that our presidents would have to follow. But you're not going to see any of that. Instead of just a blame game. If I saw some actual policies coming from this, some recommendations, then maybe I could agree with it. But this is nothing more than a witch hunt.
David, stay there. Nothing more than a witch hunt, Blake. Are you going to take that?
That is just that's crazy talk. I mean, honestly, to say that it's just a witch hunt is ridiculous. We all saw that President Biden was declining. So it's undeniable that was taking place. The question is just how much of it was covered up. And so to try and deflect now to other things, this is exactly what they should be doing, is looking backwards to see what occurred. Now, in the case of the pardon of his son, that was Joe's original signature. That's not an issue. But this last group of Autopen pardons that went out at the very last minute, at the 19th hour, those are very much in question, in my estimation. And key among all that testimony to the Oversight Committee was that this personal physician took the fifth, didn't testify about anything.
Patient confidentiality.
One moment, David Carlucci,
standard practice. But to say that because someone took the fifth, so now they're guilty?
No, I didn't. Did I say that? I didn't say that. I said I did not say that taking the fifth makes. No, I'm not. I didn't. Well, you did interrupt. So taking the fifth doesn't mean that you're guilty in America, but it does mean that. It does mean that he wasn't comfortable for whatever reason giving testimony about it. And I think that if there was substantial, accurate documentation that the president gave approval for these Autopen pardons, and then that approval was carried out the way it's supposed to be by the book, then we wouldn't even be talking about this. But that did not occur. That didn't occur with the Biden pardons.
We're talking about something that does not exist. Show me where that exists in any presidential administration. That's what every scholar is saying. So you're talking about trying to come up with some sort of standard that just doesn't exist. You're moving the goalpost as we play the game, and it's not fair. You're totally bamboozling the public. And let's have Congress do more important things, like actually do the people's work. We got 40 million people that are in jeopardy of losing their health care. And what are we talking about? An Autopen? Come on.
Rosemary, I'll bring you into this lively discussion. I thought last night was lively. This is getting even more lively. We've talked about this on the show a lot. This idea of sort of political, legal tit for tat. That the Dems pursued Trump through various guises. They literally, he claims, they literally tried to lock him up to stop him from running for president. Now the Republicans have come in. They've gone after Comey. They've gone after Bolton. He was a Republican. There's even talk of going after Obama. It's gone down a slippery slope in this country of sort of almost like banana republic levels of trying to lock up your opponents and trying to use the mighty tools of the state to throw mud. It's not a great look for either side, is it?
These are difficult issues, and let's just go back and talk about this report. This report is very clear, and it asks the Attorney General to take a close look at it. And if she discovers that the president wasn't cognizant and didn't have the right, and there wasn't the right authority to use the Autopen, that those pardons and other executive orders should be voided. I mean, that's all this report is simply doing, and frankly, that's following the law.
David, while I've got you here, the Democrats don't seem to be in a great place, as we discussed, as we have been discussing earlier in the show. And there is a lot of score settling. There's a lot of bad blood coming out of the collapse of the Biden administration. We've had Harris on this bizarre book tour saying she could run again and she could have won. It was the closest presidential election ever, and all that. It looks like you're going to have a severely interesting, we say, tilt to the hard left with Mamdani in New York. You've got Bernie Sanders saying it should be AOC. How are you feeling as a Dem? Because it strikes me that you guys are still a little bit punch drunk from last November and haven't really got your act together yet in holding this government properly to account.
Well, it might look that way compared to what we see in the GOP, where any dissension from what Donald Trump wants or says is just means to leave the party. On the Democratic side, we have a democratic process and we have a big tent. Look at New York City. I'm here in New York. We have Andrew Cuomo, Zoran Mamdani, who are taking up over 80% of the poll in this election. I hear a lot of people complaining about Zoran, but meanwhile, the Republican candidate, Curtis Sliwa, is polling at 15%, if not lower. In fact, if this election goes down that way, the Republican candidate will get the least amount of vote share in the history of the city of New York. So there's a lot of energy in the Democratic Party, and that's what it's supposed to look like. Instead, we see on the other side, in the GOP, you have a president talking about running for a third term. And let me educate viewers that that's actually against the 22nd Amendment.
We covered that at some length. I'll show you my hat. It says Trump 28. Is that send chills down your spine?
Well, it just makes me concerned about the democratic process, and it makes me very concerned as a political strategist.
He's just trolling you, though, isn't he? He's just winding you up. That's what he does. Okay. He sends people crazy.
Oh, okay. So our president is supposed to be a trolling person. It's supposed to be a joke. We have to decide what's serious, what's not. I don't think it's too funny, especially when we have 1 million people that have lost their jobs in the United States this year under this president. We have more people losing health care. We have issues about food insecurity because of this president and what he's done. And he's trolling and he's talking about a third term. I don't think it's too funny. And I don't think many independents, you see that in the gubernatorial elections that we're having this year, not many, but every one of these, the Democrat is the favor. We have a lot of energy in the party. It might look a little chaotic, but I'd rather that than just have a monarch or someone that's telling you exactly what to do. Look, the president is stripping away the powers of this Congress. Speaker Johnson will even admit it to people. He has absolutely no power. And the same with the majority leader in the Senate. This is devastating towards the way we govern. And it's a real problem, and I hope people wake up to it.
I understand your point of view, but I'm not the only person in America that's looking at the Democrats now and saying you could be doing more to hold Trump to account. It strikes me that there's more opposition
we have elections
on the streets than there is in Congress or in the Senate or even amongst the leadership of your party.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Why aren't the Democrats, if everything's fine as you say, and you've got all this energy, why are you unable to stop Donald Trump doing all this stuff?
Donald Trump is the president. He was elected to be the president. He's shut the government down. It's not even functioning.
Well,
right
I mean,
now.
the Republicans.
And
the
any
Republicans
election that is contested, Democrats are winning or expected to win. So I think Democrats have the wind at their back. And yes, it can be messy, but that's the democratic process. We have a big tent. We have a loud tent. But there's a lot of energy with Democrats and independents, and every poll we see is leading that. So New York City, New Jersey, Virginia, all Democrats are expected to win. So other than that, there's not much you can do. You try to negotiate with the president, but he won't even negotiate with us. The guy that wrote the book, The Art of the Deal, he can't even make a deal with Democrats in our own country. He's running around the world, but our government is shut down, and he wants to blame everyone else but himself. But the American people are not going to allow that. Why? Because the buck stops with the president. You can blame everyone you want, but once you run out of people to blame, there's no one left except yourself.
All right, David Carlucci, come back and see us soon and let us
Look
know
forward
how
to
it
it.
goes in New York. David Carlucci there, former New York Democratic Senator. Rosemary, yeah, he's got a point, right? You know, the polls are showing that they're going to take the Dems are going to take the Virginia governorship. You're about to lose New York City to the hard left. You know, midterms aren't looking good.
No, I'm going to talk about New Jersey because I am from New Jersey.
Please.
It's where I ran for office, and I actually ran against the Democrat who is the candidate for governor. That race is so telling. New Jersey is in a situation where it is completely unaffordable, worst place to do business, highest taxes in the nation. It's a mess, right? And we got there because of 8 years of Democratic control of New Jersey. And initially, you know, the race was, there was about a 20-point spread because the candidate, the Democratic candidate, is so bad and has no message and has no solution to the problems in New Jersey, doesn't know how to fix affordability, doesn't know how to lower budgets and do what needs to be done in New Jersey. Now it's neck and neck. And I think Jack Ciattarelli is actually going to pull it off, and he's going to win that race. And I said it here today.
All right, we'll hold to that. But the pollster we had on earlier, James Johnson from JL Partners, says it's an uphill climb across the country for the Republicans. You have that incumbency issue in the midterms anyway, where you know, whoever's in power tends to get a bit of a kicking. And the people that elected Donald Trump were voters that didn't normally vote in elections. What can the Republicans do to make sure people who voted for Donald Trump turn out in the midterms as well? I'll come to you, Blake. I'll come to you in a sec.
I think all we have to do is remind people how crazy the Democratic Party has become. Look at New York.
It's about to get a lot easier.
Right,
so, yeah.
right. So progressive. And frankly, we have to remind families and parents that it's about affordability. It's making sure that we have the choice to make decisions about our children. It's about those kitchen table issues. We've got to continue to remind the American people of it, because that's what's matter. Because people showed up in November because they were fed up and they were sick of it all. And they were sick of the crazy policies and what was going on in our schools and the affordability crisis in this country. So that's all that has to be done for these midterm elections, I think.
Blake, you were nodding along vigorously there.
Yeah, it's something that can. Those are all. I absolutely agree with you. To focus on the issues is key. But one thing that the Republicans can do differently in the upcoming midterms is that we have not historically gone after ballots and done ballot chasing and tried to get the vote out in non-presidential election cycles. And I think that's a huge part of why President Trump won in 2024, because Republican efforts in those areas were very successful. And it was the first time we've done it. And in contrast, the Democrats have been doing this for a long time. They have less juice to squeeze out of that stone than the Republicans do. I think we can make up the difference. And you know what David said about them doing well in New York City and Virginia and New Jersey, which I agree is on the verge of becoming Republican. That shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. It's like, oh, they're holding serve in areas that they should win, and that's not indicative of eventual Democratic success across the country.
Right, guys, we'll stay there. We will talk about Mamdani in New York after the break and plenty more. Yes, that's Progressive frontrunner Zohran Mamdani is now facing criminal referrals over alleged foreign donations. Republicans are pushing for a full investigation into his citizenship status. Desperation, or is this going somewhere? Don't go anywhere. We'll talk about it after the break. Welcome back to Harry Cole Saves the West. Remember to subscribe on YouTube. You can see why Tucker Carlson called me a foreigner who knows nothing and knows nothing about history. You won't want to miss that. And that was, yes, that was my Tucker Carlson impression. Right, back to the serious business. New York's mayoral race is spicing up next Tuesday, I think it is going to be. There seems to be some meltdowns over in Mamdani. The progressive frontrunner is a nice way of putting it. I'd say he's probably more of a communist. He now faces criminal referrals over foreign donations and questions even about his citizenship. Mamdani says it's all a smear campaign. It's an Islamophobic witch hunt, in his words. But the feds are taking it seriously, it seems. Rosemary Becchi is still with me, as is Blake Marnell. Mr. Bricksuit, this is just desperation, isn't it? Right, this guy's going to win. Yeah, he's got some crazy policies. Yeah, he's got some crazy friends. He is a massive lefty, and everyone's just melting down. Right, Blake?
I agree that it does look like he's going to win, but there are also serious concerns about whether or not he lied on his naturalization forms when he became a citizen.
That's a pretty low blow to go after someone's citizenship just because they're going to beat you in an election.
Look, and I'm not in favor of doing that or fast tracking it in advance of the election. If that's something that is an issue, it should be looked at and dealt with the same way it would be dealt for anybody else who lied to become an American citizen. So if you lie on your naturalization forms during the process of becoming an American, you don't get a pass on it. If it's discovered later, it needs to be looked at. That's all.
Isn't it just creating a stink before polling day?
Look, it should not be done before the election. Okay, so I agree that that's probably a little bit of. I would like it looked at afterwards.
Rosemary, there's a great line in the Ides of March, where a great film, George Clooney film about a Democratic primary, where it says, "I don't care if the guy's got a gold mine doesn't have a gold mine in Liberia. I just want to hear him deny it for a news cycle." This is what we're seeing here with this stuff, isn't it? It's like, let's throw as much mud at the wall, see what sticks. The guy's clearly going to win. Let's see if we can have some fun with him.
You're probably right. Unfortunately, all these candidates are bad. And it's so sad that we are going down this path in New York, that we are, as you said, frankly, going to elect a communist. And it's just frightening.
I'm probably going to get in trouble with
No, it's just frightening that is going on in New York. And New York is it's on the verge of being self-destructing, frankly.
Brits have seen this movie before. The Brits have seen this play out. We had Jeremy Corbyn, hard left, guy because Hamas was his friend. He invited Hezbollah and Hamas to come to meetings in Parliament. He wanted to nationalise everything. He wanted to give everything away for free. He came very close to winning an election in 2017, but and he ended up destroying his entire political party. It led them to their worst electoral defeat in history. He was sucking up to Putin. I mean, we don't need to tell you this is a crazy idea, but a lot of Republicans, I keep hearing, they've come on this show and said it, is, let's it'll be fine if Mamdani gets elected, and then we can expose how crazy he is when he's in power. Where do you sit on that argument? I personally think it's crazy, but do you think that this might actually help the Republican cause to have such a poster boy for the hard left?
I actually do think it's crazy because, again, New York is in a situation, it's going to end up bankrupt, frankly. He's talking about raising taxes, raising corporate taxes. You're driving out more companies.
Lots of people going to Florida pretty quickly.
Yeah,
right?
JP Morgan has more people employed in Texas now than they do New York City. Like, companies are fleeing New York City. I think the recent poll New York Post did said 26% of New Yorkers say they're going to leave if he's elected. And so that doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, but there is precedent for the Republican candidate pulling out, right? Mike Bloomberg was given a clear run at it. That doesn't seem to be happening, but one way you could stop it, stop Mamdani, is the Republican pulling out. Why has the president not picked up the phone and urged to pull out?
I'm not sure. I would have offered him a job somewhere.
Yeah. Nice cushy ambassadorship. I think was one of the rumors. Blake, sorry, what do you? I keep calling you Brick. I can't help it.
Brick is fine.
Brick
is fine.
Do you get that a lot? Do people call you Brick?
Brick's fine, absolutely.
Mr. Brick?
Yeah, Mr. Wall.
Blake. Blake Brick, I like it. I like it. Why is the Republican still in this race if Mamdani is such a threat?
Well, Curtis Sliwa has a long history of representing New Yorkers, and it's his right to run. And he's not necessarily really being backed by the national party, so to speak. So you can't really expect him to drop out. I would have, back when there were 3 people running against Mamdani, and it was Adams and Cuomo and Curtis. I would have liked to have seen them come together and say, hey, what can we do to all join together to defeat this common threat to the greatest city in America and one of the greatest cities in the world? And perhaps then Curtis could have gotten some accommodations that he's not going to get if Mamdani's mayor, and he's not going to get if Cuomo's mayor, and he wouldn't have gotten if Adams was mayor. But if they had all 3 of those people had gotten together and say, we're going to go united front, and we're going to do this, and Curtis is going to get this, and Mayor Adams is going to get that, it might have been a better path.
It's a fairly sorry state of affairs for, as you say, is one of the greatest cities on the planet. The incumbent mayor's being kicked, is out with a big cloud of corruption over him. The New York governor who had to resign in the middle of COVID over a sex and sleaze scandal is running. The other guy is a 35-year-old, untested, kind of slightly dubious commie, as we have.
He's been a citizen for less than 8 years, and he's got 4 years of experience in state government. And that's not the resume that makes you the mayor of the greatest city in America.
It's a pretty shoddy state of affairs all round, really. And the Republicans can't, the Republican guy is pretty kooky, isn't he?
It is. No,
what have New Yorkers done to deserve this?
We have got to get better candidates. We just have to start to recruit better people to run for office. We make it too hard for people. We really do.
While I've got both of you here, I want to pick up, it's a theme we've been looking at over the last few weeks, these increasing strikes on Venezuela by Donald Trump. Not very America first, I would argue, Brick. There's I've done it again, Blake. There's increasing concerns that these elections aren't legal. Donald Trump ran. You were at those rallies. Donald Trump ran on a platform of getting Americans out of forever wars, and it looks like he's about to start striking the Venezuelan coastline. How do you feel about that?
Look, the people that are running drugs into the United States, they're a terrorist organization, and the president is fully within his authority to interdict those shipments.
Is he though? Because there's a lot of people saying that he's
these are not just, the U.S. Navy is not in the Gulf of America just waiting for a boat to come by and then looking at it and deciding to knock it out of the water. Do you know that they are tracking those people from the very point of origin, from wherever they're leaving their coast, and then you know that they have intelligence that they're basing their targeting on. They're not just like, there's a boat, there's blue jugs in there, we better have a kinetic strike. They have to have intelligence that ties it to that. And there's no way that they need to say, we can't do anything about the drugs coming to America until they actually reach America. That's idiotic.
Rosemary, what do you agree? One minute until then.
So I disagree with you. I think this is part of his America First agenda. I think it's about keeping our families safe. I think it's about keeping drugs out of this country. I really do. So I really think it's a part of what people elected him to do.
And do you think that's a view widely shared within the base?
I do. I really do. Yes.
You're nodding.
Yes.
You are
really
the physical representation of the MAGA base there. So if you're nodding, Blake, then you must be on something. Blake, lovely to see you again. Slightly longer on the show than your first appearance.
Yes.
But come back and see us soon in the run up to midterms. Come back before then. Rosemary as well. Thank you very much, Rosemary Becchi, there joining us. And come back and see us and let us know how. I know New Jersey's not far from New York, but listen, good luck. That's all I'm gonna say. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all of that on YouTube, on Spotify now as well. Don't forget to watch that Tucker Carlson interview just for the laugh. But loads more goodies as well. Good night.